was always the Jags.
Always the Jags.
Welcome into Always the Jags, your number one podcast for all things Jacksonville, all things Jaguars, all things Duval. You know, it's we're in the off season now, and it's hard to be interested in football for me right now as a Jaguars fan, because you can't help but watch all these games and just feel like this should be us. We should be there, right? But the coaching carousel has largely ended. And so I was debating, because I want to keep, doing videos even in the offseason, keep talking Jaguars, keep you guys updated on what's going on in our section of Duval County. But I'm like, what do I talk about? Until we're watching Trevor Lawrence throw, 6 touchdowns in a game again, it's like, where's the interest? Like, what do I do? Obviously, we got free agency of the draft coming up, but those are months away. So I've been running some mock drafts, of course. Jen Jag has been, he puts out like a new one every other week. One of the best Jags creators out there. Even UCF was like, I don't really be doing free agency, but I'm doing mock drafts. But Jen Jag is that guy. So if you haven't seen him already, go check out Jordan DeLugo, Jen Jag. He does great content on Jaguars mock draft. And I've liked a lot of his mock drafts. I've been checking them out. But for this video, because we still got so much time before the draft, so my plan is, on this video, I just want to talk about the coaching carousel. I want to talk about where the Jaguars are headed as a team. And I'll even give my Super Bowl predictions, because this will be out before the Super Bowl. And then probably after that, I'll go ahead and do like a free agency mock. And then I'll do my own mock draft. And then I like to do a mock draft after free agency, because after free agency and the dust settles, then we'll know. And I will say this year, like in other years past, picking in the first round, it was really important to know what other teams wanted and what other teams needed and what other players other teams were high on. This year, since we don't pick to the second round, it's kind of tough to make that determination and try to see what happens. It's like, because there's so many teams picking ahead of us, right? Like in a first round, it's just one team is picking a player, and then you just got to know what they want, so that way you can still get your guy and know if you need to trade up. This year, there are multiple teams with multiple picks ahead of us, and we haven't been in the situation in a while, and we'll still find out if it's worth it with Travis Hunter. It's like, I don't think he was a bust, but I miss our first round pick right now. I'm just saying, it shouldn't have cost us that much. With the Browns, we moved up from 5 to 2. It should not have cost us a first and a second, and a high second. We should have been able to get that done for a second. Maybe 2 seconds. Having to throw in our first from next year, even if Travis Hunter was a superstar. And again, our season went better than anyone could have anticipated, right? The only thing better would have been winning the Super Bowl. And even after winning the Super Bowl, it's like, yeah, that second, like maybe 2 seconds should have got it done, but it shouldn't have cost us an extra first and a second, But we did what we had to do to get the player that we wanted. And clearly he was a player that we needed as well, based upon that humiliating loss. Well, it wasn't humiliating, but based upon that loss to the Bills, where we couldn't stop Josh Allen and his gaggle of no-name receivers. So let's talk about this coaching carousel. First of all, the best news for any Jaguars fan: Anthony Campanile and Grant Udinski are safe. They are remaining in Jacksonville. And it's good for a number of reasons. Because, first of all, the fact that our coaches we're getting head coaching gig looks. Grant Udinski was a finalist for the Browns job. So not just the interview, like he went on the second one. Anthony Campanile, I'm pretty sure, was a finalist for the Cardinals job. And I don't know if Grant Udinski got a second interview with the Bills. I can't remember. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of those hires and my thoughts on them. I think that it's incredible news that we were able to keep Grant Udinski and Anthony Campanile, because even in the seasons where we were kind of good, like when we had our 2017 season, our 2022 season, our coordinators weren't getting looks for head coaching jobs. Like, I think in 2017, I think we had Nathaniel Hackett, and he wasn't being interviewed, I don't think. And I don't remember who our defensive coordinator was. But same thing in 2022. Like, um, who was it? I can't remember the defensive coordinator. He was the linebackers coach. But he wasn't getting looks, and Press Taylor wasn't getting looks in 2022 either. So the fact that Udinski and Campanile are both getting looks, to me, is our first getting serious looks around the league. And again, obviously, we had a better season than those two, 13-4 versus 10-7, and 10-7 and 9, and I think it was 9-8. Yeah, 9-8 in those seasons. But those seasons both had deeper playoff runs, right? But we still ended up not having our coordinators get any looks. To me, that's one thing, Jaguars fans, we can hang our hats on and say, hey, that's why this is going to be different, if that makes sense. Because other teams are looking at our coordinating talent and they're saying, like, oh, this is different because of their staff and who they have in place. It wasn't just like an influx of great players hitting at the right time, because sustained success requires a top-notch staff. Because you can have players come in and play really well, and then the next season they're not so good, and then all that sustained success goes out the window. So the fact that our staff appears like it was the bench line for our success, obviously a lot of players made a difference too. Having Trevor Lawrence makes a difference, right? But having our staff come in and make that, to me, that is what we can hang our hat on and be like, okay, maybe this is different. Because in all honesty, it needs to be different. It has to be different. Because Liam Cohen, he had a phenomenal season. No one's going to take that away from him. Lynn Jones, of course, all that controversy for her saying nice things to him, which still doesn't make any sense. No one can take away this phenomenal season. But what he can't be, what he absolutely cannot be, is Doug Marrone again. Can't be Doug Peterson again. He can't be Dan Quinn this year. We can't have a magical run and then it all fall apart the next year. And that's what the Jaguars have had the past times since we haven't had sustained success since 1999, maybe. Because I think in 2007, I don't know if we made it in 7 and 8, but I'm pretty sure it fell apart pretty quickly after that. So that's Liam Cohen's biggest challenge. How do we go from being disrespected? Because let's be honest, like the Jaguars were disrespected in a lot of ways, but like this year, we're going to come in with respect. Teams are going to be respecting us and expecting us to play well and play to a level that, again, we've proven we can play at, but can we sustain it? Like, we don't, like Pete Prisco pointed out, you don't want that disrespect narrative. If that taking us all the way to the Super Bowl, great, but you can't just rely on that disrespect narrative for sustained success if you want to become a team like the Bills and like the Chiefs, who are perennially in the playoffs and are perennially a play away from making the Super Bowl. And that's Liam Cohen's next destination. And it seems like a lot to put on a second-year coach, but he already raised the bar so high by going 13-4, And he doesn't have to go 13-4 again, right? Like it could be 12-5. Here I am saying our Jaguars head coach could go 12-5. It could be, 11-6, whatever it takes to get into the playoffs. But we've got to show that last year was not a flash in the pan. And that's the biggest challenge for Liam Cohen and the biggest challenge for the rest of the Jaguars team, because a lot of guys on this team have known flashy seasons, flashy, 1-year wonder kind of things. And we've got to nip that and it still happens today. There's always a magical team that comes out of nowhere, and then the next year they're nowhere to be found. The Commanders. Last year they went all the way to the championship game. This year they were nowhere to be found. And you could argue, injuries, Jaden Daniels, okay, right. But still, they were supposed to go so much farther than they did this year. They crashed and burned. And so, and obviously, like I said, Dan Quinn is going to be safe because of all the injuries. But that's the challenge for Liam Cohen, and I'm looking forward to see how he tackles it. I'm looking forward to see how James Gladstone tackles it. And I'm looking forward to see how Trevor Lawrence tackles it, because this will be his second time. And again, 2023, like, it did kind of crash and burn, but like it started off very successful. Like we thought we were going to be a number 1 seed in the AFC. And then you could argue that injuries kind of threw us off there. But again, I don't care who gets hurt. I mean, the most impressive thing to me is that this is a 13-4 season, and injury riddled season. Like this is one of the most injury riddled seasons Jaguars have had in a long time. To be missing our top 3 receivers and top 3 defensive backs for a good period of time, and we went into the playoffs missing our tackle, top 2 defensive backs, like that's a lot, you know? And so it'll be interesting to see how all of that plays out and how Trevor Lawrence handles it. And, like I said, I'll at the end I'll kind of talk a little bit about free agency and stuff, but um now on to like the coaching carousel and the different coaching hires and kind of what I think about them. I had my predictions about who was going to go where. I thought Kevin Stefanski would have been a good fit on the Titans. He ended up going to Atlanta, who I originally had predicted would get Mike Tomlin, but then Mike Tomlin kind of, I realized he was going to take a break. I guess they announced he was going to take a break, so that kind of made sense. That Tomlin ended up ending out of with Tomlin out of the cycle. It makes sense that Stefanski ended up going to Atlanta. Out of all the coaches that got, these are the coaches that I thought were going to get head coaching gigs: John Harbaugh, Kevin Stefanski, Brian Flores, Jim Schwartz, Joe Brady, Clint Kubiak, Jesse Minter, Chris Shula, and Mike McCarthy. And the only 3 that didn't were Chris Shula, Brian Flores, and Jim Schwartz. Those are the guys that didn't end up getting head coaching gigs that I thought they were. Everyone else ended up getting a gig somewhere. And some of my predictions were correct. So, like, I thought that the Giants were going to end up with John Harbaugh. I thought even after Mike McDaniel fired, even after Stephen Ross fired Mike McDaniel, I thought the Giants were going to end up getting John Harbaugh no matter what, because that was still, even after that, that was still the best spot, and he knew it. And he's looks like he's building out a pretty top notch staff. And the Eagles are looking shakier than they did before, and the Cowboys aren't. It's a competitive division in that NFC East. So you could argue that maybe he would have had more success in the AFC South, but I think the Giants look like more of a team that's ready to compete right now. I thought the Titans were going to go Stefanski. They really surprised me by going Robert Saleh, and I didn't expect Robert Saleh to get another head coaching gig in this cycle. Mainly, like, compared to Brian Flores, right? Like, both have had experiences as head coaches. Both had, to me, like, Brian Flores had more success as a head coach than Robert Saleh. And Brian Florence's defense has arguably been better than Robert Saleh's the past 2 years. Brian Flores has been a defensive coordinator for the past 2 years. Robert Saleh went back to San Francisco, had an injury-riddled defense that still was able to play well, but, like, let's be real. I mean, the Bears dropped a lot. Like, they were known for being a bad defense towards the end of the year. So I'm a little surprised that Saleh got the nod over Brian Flores, because I thought he was doing a great job with that Vikings defense. Huge reason why they went 14-3. So that was a little surprising to me. And I thought the Titans were going to go Stefanski, so them going Robert Saleh was interesting. This Liam Cohen this Titans Jaguars beef just got so much more juice to it. I mean, Robert Saleh is going to see us twice a year now. Ooh, like, that's a rivalry. For anyone that doesn't know, in the 49ers game, Robert Saleh, made some thing saying the Jaguars had like an advanced sign stealing system, and people thought that he was a little butthurt that he lost the job to Liam Cohen, because many believed he was a finalist to be the Jaguars head coach. But he ended up losing out to Liam Cohen, so they thought he were kind of taking his rage out on Liam Cohen. And that's when we saw the first fire from Liam Cohen, because after the game, Robert Saleh went to handshake him, and he was like, no, no. And I guess Liam thought he heard Robert say something out of his mouth, and Liam's like, keep that name out your mouth. It was almost like the Oscars, except there was no slapping. And players, had to hold him back, and Robert Saleh's like jeering at him again, like, I'll end your life, bro. It was fiery. And that's usually something you see from players going against players, because they're like physically. But Liam Cohen and it was after a win too. The Jaguars won, and that's the best part. So, and that kind of fire, that's when we realized, like, oh, this dude is a monster. And that's, I would kind of say ignited the entire run for the whole season. And then we had the Texans downfall and kind of came back up. But anyway, that little mini feud showed the Jaguars players that Liam Cohen is a fiery man. And he just makes you want to play for him. And so to have Robert Saleh come here twice a year. I also heard rumors that a former Jaguars pass coordinator is interviewing to be, I think it was Urban Meyer's. I don't know if it was Daryl Bevel or someone who used to be a Jaguars offensive coordinator or passing game coordinator is interviewing for the Titans offensive coordinator position. So we'll see. The one thing that does kind of, I could say, scare me, or not, no, Gus Bradley. Yeah. I also saw that Gus Bradley is interviewing for the Titans defensive coordinator position. I think he even got it. I think Gus Bradley's going to be their defensive coordinator. And that adds a little fuel to the fire because he was a former Jaguars head coach. So just this rivalry is just getting more and more layers to it, more and more layers. Um, I do kind of worry about Brian Daboll going to be the offensive coordinator of the Titans because he's good. He knows how to do offenses and he's had success making quarterbacks better. So he's going to help Cam Ward out a lot. And I really wish Brian Daboll was going somewhere else. Like, I would have loved him anywhere. Just not really. I don't want him on the Titans. Only thing I can hope for is that we're still good enough to beat them twice. But he does such great things with Cam Ward that another team takes him away after this year. I don't know, but he's a good coach. So, Steelers getting Mike McCarthy, that one didn't really make a lot of sense. It's like, on one hand, it's like you want to do something different, right? Because Mike Tomlin is a Super Bowl winning head coach, never had a losing season, but still felt like it was stale and time to move on. So then they brought in a guy who's 10 years older, also Super Bowl winning head coach, very few losing seasons, but again has like a 20-year career. And it's kind of like, what? Like, it feels like they just hired the older, whiter, fatter version of Mike Tomlin. Like, I don't get that. I don't really get what the Steelers are doing. Like, on one hand, again, you have a guy who's a proven winner. He had success even when he was with the Cowboys. But like at this point in his career, it's like it's kind of Super Bowl or bust. Like, you can't just get to the playoffs with your Mike McCarthy and be like it's okay. So, and you think they would kind of want like a young, fresh voice, one of these coordinators. I thought Brian Flores would have been a great fit for them, but they went Mike McCarthy, so I guess we'll see what happens there. I think the Browns made a huge mistake by picking Todd Monken over Jim Schwartz as their head coach. That was the strangest decision I've seen. And also apparently the Browns head coaching interview process is grueling. So I thought the Browns were going to elevate Jim Schwartz so they didn't lose him because I thought there was a good chance he could get a head coaching job. And then bringing Todd Monken in as their offensive coordinator would make a lot of sense. But nope, he's their head coach. Because again, I don't think Todd Monken is safe in Baltimore. I don't know if because the Ravens ended up getting Jesse Minter, who I did think that the Ravens were going to get. There was a lot of people. I can't really take credit for that. A lot of people were predicting. A lot of people thought it kind of seemed like it was going to go that way. Um, but the Ravens get him, and Todd Monken's not really safe in Baltimore. So I would kind of think that like he could be the Browns offensive coordinator, but I even thought the Browns would be a great spot for Brian Daboll because I mean he could really revitalize that offense. I thought they might even hire him as their head coach. To me, I would take Brian Daboll over Todd Monken, but and Todd Monken has had offensive success, so I guess we'll see. Jim Schwartz is not happy about it, so that will be fascinating. Um, had Anthony Campanile ended up leaving, I would have been like, hey Jim, you want to come over here and enact your revenge on the Browns? Um, he's gone, by the way. There's no way he's staying on the Browns. He's going somewhere else to be a DC, and we'll just see where he lands. Um, I thought the Falcons would get Joe Brady, and they ended up going for Kevin Stefanski, which again makes a lot of sense. Both teams have, I mean, again, it's that powerful running game that both of those coaches like, and Bijan Robinson, James Cook, kind of cut from the same cloth. Um, so I see why the Falcons went with Kevin Stefanski and what appealed to him there. Having Bijan Robinson, he does have some quarterback like questions, but also it's kind of like, are the Falcons gonna get rid of Kirk Cousins now? Because like if they release him, his best fit is still Atlanta. So I don't really know because like that's his number one fit. Like his old coach is gonna be there. He had some success with them last year, led them on. I think he won at least 3 or 4 games while Penix was hurt. So I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see. Michael Penix had an up and down year and he was injured, so the Stefanski hire from the Falcons, so that does make sense. I thought Mike Tomlin could go there, but it looks like he's going to take a year off, so that makes a lot of sense for them. The Bills firing Sean McDermott was like that was extremely surprising to me. A lot of coaches getting fired this year was kind of surprising. I mean, once the Ravens got rid of John Harbaugh, it was kind of like open season. Like Mike Tomlin was no longer safe after the Ravens got rid of Harbaugh, and it kind of felt like whoever lost that game was going to get fired. But Sean McDermott, I mean, he led the Bills. He's only not been to the playoffs like once. Like there's few coaches who can even like sure Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season, but like how many times can you say he's never not led his team to the playoffs? Only one time. So that was surprising. I think Sean McDermott's also probably going to take a year off because it was probably a lot of turmoil, and he and Mike Tomlin will be some of the hottest names next year's cycle. Um, at first, I didn't understand why the Bills elevated Joe Brady to head coach because, like, you fired Sean McDermott for not getting you into the playoffs. So why would you elevate a guy from McDermott's staff to get you a different result next year, right? But also, I can look at it from this perspective. The Bills were going to lose Joe Brady no matter what. He was going to get hired by somebody else to be their head coach. And so by elevating him, they keep him and offense together. And the main issue for the Bills of late had been their defense. And Sean McDermott is a defensive guy, which is why it was a little confusing. So there's going to be a lot on that defensive coordinator, whoever they bring in, to make sure that that defense is ready to go. Jim Schwartz, anybody? I'm sure he would take that in a heartbeat. Go play one season with the Bills, let that offense help set up your defense, and then go become a head coach next year. That's a good deal to me. That's if I'm Jim Schwartz, I'm calling the Bills saying, when would you like me to start? Right? Or at least interviewing for it. So we'll see there. Raiders, I predicted we're going to get Clint Kubiak. They need a young, bright offensive mind to pair with their number one pick in Fernando Mendoza. And again, the fact that he was able to help Sam Darnold have sustained success is the reason why they want him. And again, you always, whenever you're hiring coaches from different areas, you always like if it's a defensive guy who's coaching the team, you want their offensive guy to be your head coach, and vice versa. If it's an offensive guy, you want their defensive guy because the defense is pretty much all on that guy's plate. And so, like for Clint Kubiak, Mike McDonald is a defensive guy. That's why the Seahawks defense is so good. Those are his schemes. So Clint Kubiak, the offense is completely on him. And the Seahawks offense has been prolific as well. I mean, look at what he did for JSN. The way that he's nurtured JSN along. So Clint Kubiak makes a lot of sense for the Raiders. Obviously, they're going to get Fernando Mendoza. Probably try to pair him up with a young receiver. And, the Raiders may not be as far away as people think. People keep saying that the Jaguars would trade for Max Crosby. I don't see that happening. But I think Clint Kubiak, he was one of the ones I predicted, and that makes a lot of sense to me. I already talked about the Ravens and Jeffy Minter. Jeff Halfley to the Dolphins. I didn't really get that one. Because, like, Jeff Halfley's been a good defensive coordinator for the Packers. But, like, without Micah Parsons, the defense kind of cratered. And, like, I get it, Micah Parsons is kind of like the anchor, but also, like, there are other teams who have good defenses where it's not only reliant on one guy. So, I don't know. That one kind of, I don't really see the upgrade in him versus Mike McDaniel. Especially because your defense was kind of coming together pretty well. Like, it wasn't really the issue. It was kind of Tua in the offense, which I guess makes sense why McDaniel was fired, but to go in the different direction and get, it just feels like there are better options out there. And, like, I feel like if I'm Stephen Ross, I'm kind of regretting firing Mike McDaniel because I don't think that he was he would have between him and Jeff Halfley. I don't really Jeff Halfley doesn't really look like an upgrade over Mike McDaniel. Now maybe he'll prove me wrong, but it doesn't seem like it at first. It seemed like Stephen Ross did that to go get John Harbaugh, and then realized, oh, John Harbaugh can go wherever he wants, and he's probably not going to pick Miami. So, and then the Cardinals get Mike LaFleur. Um, Mike LaFleur is a great offensive coordinator. I didn't realize he was he wasn't really being talked about as much. That's why I didn't predict him going anywhere. I thought the Cardinals would try to get someone steady like Mike McCarthy, um, to just kind of like steady the ship because they've had so much turnover by going to guys with no head coaching experience, and looks like they're going to continue doing that. I mean, they tried it with Cliff Kingsbury, bringing him from college. Then they decided to bring in Jonathan Gannon from the Eagles, and now they're bringing in another guy who's coaching in the NFL. So it's interesting that there's no guys in this cycle going from college straight to NFL head coaching. But I think a lot of college coaches like where they are, and I think a lot of NFL guys prefer to see like they'll have a college guy come up through the ranks as a coordinator, like Joe Brady did, and then become a head coach, rather than like become a head coach somewhere and then become a coordinator. So those are my thoughts on the coaching carousel predictions. On the coaching carousel where everybody landed. Um, Talking about the Super Bowl a little bit. I mean, the Seahawks are going to win. Question is like by how much, and like I saw this funny meme where it was like Topher Grace's Venom and Peter Parker on a web, and he was like, "What do you?" And he was like, "We could settle this." And Topher Grace was like, "Yeah, I'm thinking humiliation." And it was like the Seahawks was over his face, and Peter Parker was the Patriots. So yeah, I think the Seahawks are gonna give BTA. Um, Maybe the game will be closer than I'm like necessarily predicting. I think if you're a Patriots fan, it's impressive that you're able to get back here. I just, for every other fan in the NFC, AFC, it's like watching. Nobody wanted this matchup. I can tell you that. I'd rather have the Jaguars and like the Commanders or something. I don't know, but nobody wanted this matchup. But it's gonna be in Santa Clara. Like I said, I think the Seahawks are gonna hoist their second Lombardi. I think it's probably not their second one, but their second one since I've been alive, I guess. Um, I think it's very interesting that Sam Darnold is going to be the first quarterback from the 2018 draft class to not only get to, but likely win a Super Bowl over Baker Mayfield, who went number one, over Josh Allen, who's regularly hailed as the best quarterback in the NFL, over Lamar Jackson, who again is also regularly hailed as one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So that probably doesn't sit too well with those guys, especially when it seemed like Baker Mayfield was going to take the Buccaneers to the Super Bowl this year, with how well they were playing at the very beginning of the year. So there's a few interesting narratives, but no incredible storylines. It's kind of a revenge game for. I don't think it's a revenge game for anybody. I don't think, other than like Sam Darnold and the Patriots like making him see ghosts. So, I mean, when he carves him up, which I think he will do, it. I mean, there's not really much you can say about your career after you've won the Super Bowl. Like, there's not really much. Like, it doesn't really. When Sam Darnold wins, nothing else that he's done in his career will like ever matter. You know, because it's not like he's a backup who went into a situation. He was signed. He redeemed himself by playing with a top tier receiver. Went to a new system and continued to play well and put his team in positions to win. And now he's going to win the Super Bowl. So it's kind of like in the NFL, the only thing that matters is the Lombardi. That's just, and people have made that clear time and time again. Fans would rather have 5 losing seasons or 10 losing seasons followed by a Lombardi than have 20 years of making the playoffs every year. It's just the only thing that matters is the Lombardi. And Sam Darnold's about to earn it. So we'll see. I mean, yeah, I don't think the Patriots really have that much of a chance. I think Drake May is very, very good, but I don't think the Patriots have that much of a chance. I really wish Trevor Lawrence was going to be in the Pro Bowl because it would give me something to watch for the Pro Bowl football game. But glad Devin Lloyd and Ross Mattistick are sticking there, are having a good time there. As we move on to free agency, there's a lot of reports talking about Devin Lloyd probably won't end up being back. Haven't seen anything about Travis Etienne. They're expecting the market to be very robust for Lloyd, but a lot of people are still ranking running backs like Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker over Travis Etienne. First of all, if you're ranking Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker over Travis Etienne, you are bugging. You absolutely, like, to me, there's no doubt in my mind. The best cornerback the best running back in this free agency class is Travis Etienne. But hey, if they think he's the third best, that only increases our chances of keeping him. So the only thing I'll say to kind of wrap it up, I know this year we're probably Trevor Lawrence. I saw an article that was like Trevor Lawrence's cap hit is 24 million. The biggest cap hit in the NFL is 80 million for Deshaun Watson. The fact that Jim Schwartz was even willing to like take on that job and understand that like, yeah, I have a cap hit of 80 million for a guy who's not going to play is just insane. But hey, you get what you deserve. I'm talking about Deshaun Watson. So, and hopefully Jim Schwartz gets out of there and just goes to Buffalo. I think Myles Garrett's gonna realize pretty soon he cannot win a ring here because the Browns are not gonna be able to get a new quarterback. So anyway, we'll get into draft and free agency talk later on. Point being, Trevor Lawrence's cap hit is only 24 million. He's still one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the year, and those cap hits are going to go up because I think this year he played on the option because they added it to the end. So 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So yeah, the fifth year option was no. So 25 he played on the fifth year option. So for 2026, this is the first year of his new deal, and Trent Baalke arranged it so that the first cap hit is 24 million. And I think the next hit is only 35. Or it might be 35 next year and 24 this year. I'm not really sure. But either way, two pretty low cap hits for a $55 million quarterback the first 2 years. So the deal is more backloaded, but I think year 3 is a big cap hit. And then after that, there's no more guaranteed money by year 4. So it's a pretty well structured deal for the Jaguars as far as it left James Gladstone with a lot of wiggle room and things he can do. Because there's a lot of players that he signed in this wave of free agency, this past wave, that are probably going to get released next year. So while we are cash strapped, there's some moves he can make, and I'll go over that later. But the one thing I will say, like Trevor Lawrence making $55 million a year, at the time when we paid him, that was an overpay. I do believe that was an overpay. I don't think we deserve to give him that much. But this year, after the year he just had, he would be making $55 million a year. So it ends up not really making difference, right? Like, had we waited and said, like, we need to see more, because that's fair, I would have understood. Because 22, he had that great season, turned everything around, seemed like he was turning a corner. 23, kept it up, and then got hurt, and the season cratered. 24 didn't start off great. 23 is when he got hurt, and then the season kind of cratered, and we missed the playoffs. And then we made him the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. And then we had the 2024 season. And so, to me, again, that contract that we gave him, it's like, I don't think he had earned that yet. But now here we are, 2 years later, 2026. After this season, like, there's no way you can't pay him the $55 million. I'm not going to say it would have been 60 after Dak Prescott's deal, but you may have been looking at 60, to be completely honest. If you had made him wait out this deal, which I did think was the right thing to do, or like I would have preferred if we had extended him for like 45 million back then. But had you made him wait out this deal and then he turned around and played like this under Liam Cohen, maybe we would have been giving him 65 million. I don't know, but like his agent would have said, did he have a better year than Dak Prescott? It would have been a unanimous yes. Okay, so pay him more than Dak Prescott. Like the calculus would have been that simple. Or at least, did he have a better year than Joe Burrow? Okay, then he's going to be tied to Joe Burrow. Like at least to be tied. So, that's looking like a better decision now that things have kind of changed. Again, I still think 50 million was the magic number there. Still think it was an overpay, but I can acknowledge if we had not reached an agreement, and at least now he's happy. Like there's been no drama around that. And he's had a chance to like really grow into himself based upon the way he played this year. I remember watching him play against I think it was the Jets or something, and I was like, oh wow, he's playing like a $55 million quarterback. Like that's how he was playing. And so like yeah, we have his contract there. We would have had to give him $55 million a year at least. That would have been the starting number at the end of this season, just based upon the tear that he had. And yeah, he didn't go that far in the playoffs and all that stuff. Again, doesn't really matter when it's contract time. That would have been the base number. So, let me know your thoughts about the Jaguars Super Bowl coaching carousel. Are you happy that we kept our guys? And don't ever forget, it was always the Jags.